In my world, I bring about the story, the commercial, how can I say, the commercial expertise, the commercial understanding, all the resources required to bring a feature film or a TV production to the big screen. The way it works in my world is for example, if someone brings me a project, the first thing I look at the story, and then I look at who's involved above the line. Do they have a director? Do they have a producer? How many producers are involved, and what's the potential budget on it? And then it allows me to know whether or not there's any space for me to operate. Then I understand, what is it they need from me? Do they need money? Do they need a name to push it through? So I try to determine what's required in the mix to make this thing happen. Once I get that up and running, once I come to a happy medium and say, okay, this is what's required, and I can provide that. So the next thing is about really looking at the creative, working with the writer, working with other producers, getting a line producer, searching out a director, and then looking at the time frame, the timelining, putting this together. The timeline starts with, it depends on the size of the budget. So for example, if we have a project that's going into, for example, we had someone that brought a project to me. They said they wanted to start shooting in 4 months. We had no cast. We had a terrible script. Obviously no money. So I sat back on this and I thought the time frame's unrealistic. Once we got everything nailed down, we didn't even start. Principal photography didn't even start for a year. Following that, it was a 12-week shoot. After the 12-week shoot, and then we had post for 3 months. So you're looking at two and a half, maybe 3 years. And how you get paid out of that for me was in Australia they normally say points. So at the end of the day, there was going to be a return on our investment after 3 years. That never really happened. Or you get a producer's fee up front, and sometimes the production, depending on the size of the budget, doesn't allow for that. So you're working 2.5, 3 years without anything coming in, and as a producer myself, and potentially the only financier, I'm spending a lot of money and not getting a lot of return. So I had to come up with an idea of how to get a return out of these projects a lot sooner than a 3-year period. How do you become a producer? I think the best way to do that is to find someone that's actually doing it, ride their hip, and get them to actually mentor you into that space. Get to see what they do, how they do it, understand the pitfalls and the successes that might lie ahead for you. During production, and depending on what aspect of production, but if we're in pre-production, I'm communicating with the writer, I'm communicating with potentially cast. Depending on the size, I'm probably out on location with them. We're probably looking for locations. We're probably looking at different type of tax credits, incentives that we can use. We're talking to people on social media to build a profile around the project. So it's more like you're like the project manager to a certain extent. Now, as an executive producer, I'm standing back and I'm looking at building the team, ensuring the team is led in the right direction. But as a producer, I'm probably more hands-on with the project and rolling up the sleeves and doing everything that needs to be done for the budget that we have to work with. Well, during production, where I'm at is I'm probably at the other end of the phone, to be honest with you. I try to stay out the way of the team. They have a job to do. So normally there's a line producer there doing the job every day, doing the budgeting, ensuring that the flow of the project is going well. I will check in on them. I will actually, I like to be on set. I like to see it all happening. But I'm probably one layer back from these guys, watching what they're doing as a producer. And I'm there to lead. I'm there to solve the problems. But I let them get on with the project. When we get into post, I'm normally sitting in the post house, and we're talking. And there I'm understanding ADR. I'm understanding what needs to be done as far as color grading. Anything that relates to the quality of the production. That's what I'm doing. I'm sitting there learning, and I'm communicating with them, the producer, the executive producer, and potentially the other financiers. Well, I think before we even get started, what we have to be looking at is where is this film going to be distributed. In Australia, it's very difficult, given how things are put together now. Everyone's trying to get a theatrical release. And in order to get a theatrical release, you need to have cast, that equips to that. You need to have the money, and you got to have a great story. So my job, even well before we get into post, before we get to distribution, I'm looking for a distributor, and I'm talking to distributors, and also I'm getting distributors and sales agents. So I'm getting an understanding from them what they want to see in this film, who they think can carry the film, and who would make the film commercially viable. So that's a discussion I'm having with them, and I'm talking to the other producers and the cast and the director. How do you get a distributor for a film? The thing that I look at is I look at the genre of the film initially. So someone brings me a film and they said, this is the project that we have. I look at similar projects and I look at the distributors or the sales agents involved in that. Normally what happens is I'll speak to the sales agent. The sales agent would have a connection with a distributor. That's probably the best way for me to go, because walking into a distributor, there's several in Australia, and some have at best check it track records, and I look at the success that a distributor has and the reach that they have. And if the film I feel can travel overseas, I look for a distributor in Australia that has tentacles overseas. If it's going to be a local film, like say the likes of The Dressmaker or someone like that, I look at distributors like that. But it's a consensus. I will say, look, I think this is a great distributor we can work with. What do you guys think? If we can have a chance to meet with that distributor, we sit down and talk about it. We talk about the film, and we talk about the procedure that they're going to go through, the process they're going to adhere to, and then we look at how much it's going to cost us. Once we have a distributor on board, as we did in one of our films, is I try to understand. Well, we normally get a report back to where this film is going to go and how it's going to go, and the time it's going to take to get it there, and how long is the duration of the film in that space. And it's just something that we monitor on a day-to-day basis. We have communication on that, and just being aware so I can communicate that back to my team. One of the things I do is I pay attention to films, watching the film, look at the credits. If I like a film, I look at the people involved in the film. I review their work. I look at their track record. I try to build up a nest or a network of very talented people. For example, if there's a film that for example, like I'm doing a military film, so I look at all the people involved in that film. I look at where they're at now. I look at their interviews. It's about research. I do a lot of research in that, because the more I'm armed with information, the better informed I am and the better decisions I can make further down the track.